Now, when it comes to leveling up in New World Aeternum, there isn't really a way to do it wrong. There are, however, many systems and mechanics which you can use to your advantage to make the leveling journey as smooth as possible and put you in a great position for once you do hit the max level. So in today's video, we are going to cover what you can expect as you level up in Aeternum and how to get the most out of the game's crafting systems, weapon masteries, factions, and much more. However, before we go any further, I do want to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by Amazon Games, the developers of New World Aeternum, which is very kind of them because if any of you guys have been in this channel for a long time, you'll know that I was gonna make this video anyway, so for them to sponsor me to do so is very much appreciated. Make sure to use my link in the description down below. You can pick it up just there. Thank you once again very much to Amazon Games for sponsoring this video. So the first part of your adventure in Aeternum begins with you creating your character. At the time of recording this video, there are 7 different archetypes to choose from, that being the Soldier, Destroyer, Ranger, Musketeer, Occultist, Mystic, and Swordbearer. Now, these archetypes are basically just a starting point for your character in New World. Unlike in other RPGs, you can change your weapons and your playstyle at any point during the game, meaning that the choice that you make on the archetype screen is not a permanent decision. If you choose Musketeer, for example, and then later on down the line, you're like, I wish I picked the Occultist, I really like the look of the magical weapons. But you can simply just pick up a Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet, equip them, and now you effectively are the Occultist. The only permanent decisions you're going to be making in this screen are your character's appearance. However, there is one important factor to consider when choosing an archetype, and that is the crafting bonuses each one gets. Again, at time of recording, you currently get a 50 bonus in 3 different crafting, gathering, refining skills. Now, in order to learn the difference between a sort of gathering, refining, and crafting, we will cover that in a separate section within this video, so you can scrub along to that. But generally, these skills are appropriate for the playstyle and weapons of your archetype. If you're planning on playing and leveling up as a group, you may want to consider choosing 3 different archetypes, because these crafting skills can often harmonize and benefit or complement each other. For example, if you're playing as a group of 3 and you choose to play the Musketeer, it would benefit you and your group to have somebody else choose the Ranger and then the third friend to choose a Soldier archetype. Through this, you would have bonuses in armoring from you being the Musketeer, engineering, which is from the Ranger, and then weaponsmithing from the Soldier. This would give you the ability to craft lots of different types of weapons and armor, which would benefit everybody in the party. So you could be crafting things for your Soldier could be crafting things for you, and it's just generally going to make your first few days in Aeternum a lot smoother and easier to progress through. Also, on the topic of group play, this game does have these classic mechanics of tank, healer, and DPS or damage. If you're interested in a tank playstyle, you want to be on the front line absorbing damage, the best initial starting archetype for that is Soldier. For healing, I would choose the Mystic, and for damage, any of the other archetypes do work well also. If you're playing solo, I would recommend checking out the Ranger. The bow and spear work very well for that sort of lone wolf playstyle, and the crafting bonuses it gets allows you to craft better weapons and tools, gathering tools for yourself early on. But to recap on the archetypes, again, the decision here, it is not something that you need to really stress out about. I would say just choose what looks like the most fun playstyle for you, and if you want to mix up the weapons later on, you can completely, that's fine. Just remember, if you're playing in a group, sometimes it might be a good idea to each choose a different archetype for the crafting bonus, but even that isn't super necessary in the long span of the game. After choosing an archetype and customizing your character's appearance, you'll then be placed into the tutorial, where you'll learn the basic controls and mechanics for New World Aeternum. After this, you're going to wash up in one of 2 starting locations. You'll either get Windsward, which is sort of central right of the map, or you will get Monarch's Bluff, which is more on the left side of the map. The main difference between these locations is the storyline or main storyline associated with them and the side quests. They're both level 1 to 17 zones, and they both have a similar amount of resources, enemy difficulty, and so on. Now, if you're playing with a friend or a group of friends and you find that one or multiple of you start in different locations, don't worry about this. Within the first few hours of playing through the storyline, you will both end up converging in Everfall, which is the settlement sort of just above Windsward and just to the right of Monarch's Bluff. So yeah, just play like for an hour or two, and you'll end up in the same region doing the rest of the main storyline together from that point onwards. However, if playing together from the very beginning is something that's important to you, you or your friend could consider recreating their character, playing through the tutorial to then get the same starting location, so you can both play through the Windsward or Monarch's Bluff storyline. Now, I very strongly recommend playing through this main story quest line, as it gives you guys great amounts of experience, gold, and important items, not to mention unlocking various zones for you to be able to play through in the later levels of the game. You can differentiate between what is a main story quest and what is a side quest by checking your journal. So journal has a section for main story quests, and side quests are in the side story section. It's the same with the icons on the map as well. So main story quests will have sort of crossed hatchets above them. They'll be extra big and shiny. And then side quests, you can see there's many of them dotted around the map. Those are, again, not as important to do, but quite often the objectives or what they have you do will be related to the main story in that same area. So you may want to pick some up as a way to get bonus experience, gold, and some more story or lore for the game. Now, one important thing to note is as you finish your main story quest line in Monarch's Bluff or Windsward, you'll see a quest pop up in the opposite area. So for example, I played through the storyline in Pridewind in a Monarch's Bluff settlement, and then I can now see a quest in Corinth, which is the main settlement for Windsward. This is just there for those of you who want to do all of the storyline associated with the game. It's not necessary for getting character unlocks. The experience isn't really that good because, again, it's a low-level quest line, but it just means that you don't have to recreate a new character. If you want to play the alternate starting experience, you can do both of them on the same character. But in terms of progression, you want to be following the main story quest line into Everfall to talk to Jonas, and ultimately end up going to the Oxborough settlement in Everfall. As you follow the main story quest line, kill enemies, and level up, you will be earning attribute and weapon mastery points. You can spend these to increase your character's damage, survivability, outgoing healing, and various other combat capabilities. Attribute points in particular are only earned as you level, so every character level gets you a certain amount of attribute points, and you get more attribute points in the higher or later levels than you do in your earlier levels. The way that you spend these, I would recommend you take a look at your weapon's primary stat. To do this, you can hover over it in the main menu, or you can take a look at the attributes page itself. You can see for intelligence, these are all of the weapons that scale off of intelligence, so the more points we put into intelligence, these weapons will do more damage. The more points we put into dexterity, all of the weapons along this line will do more damage. You may notice, in the case of strength and dexterity, for example, some weapons appear twice. The spear, for example, it is on both the strength and dexterity line, but if you pay close attention, the spear is highlighted on dexterity, and it's a more of a faded image on strength. This is because both points into dexterity and strength give the spear damage, but the primary stat is dexterity. It has I think it's a 95%. Need to check that in the edit. I think it's about 90% scaling on dexterity, which means it's almost 1-to-1. So every point is, almost 100% damage return. Whereas strength is only 65%, so it's quite less effective. To make this easy, like I say, just generally follow the primary stat for your weapon, put the majority of your points there, and then every third or fourth point should go into Constitution. Constitution doesn't give you any damage, but it does increase the amount of hit points your character has, increases the health, and you also have these attribute threshold bonuses or attribute threshold points. These are the little circles, so they first appear at 25 points into the stat, then 50, 100, 150, so on and so forth. As you get close to these, I recommend focusing more on that particular stat, getting to the threshold point, and then moving to your Constitution, putting that to a threshold point, and then moving back to your primary stat, and then going for the next threshold point. This is like a good way to look at your stats as well. A lot of these threshold bonuses do give you some pretty significant advantages, especially if you're using something like a spear. You may want to consider getting to about 100 points or 150 points of dexterity, and then maybe look at the first 25 points into strength or even first 50 points into strength to see how much that bonus would benefit your playstyle. In the case of healing and using the life staff, only focus increases your outgoing healing. Putting points into any other stat will not increase healing, so healers primarily just go for focus. Focus on focus as a healer. Tanks do want to put more points into Constitution, but pay attention to your strength or dexterity or any other tanking weapon you might use. You still want your weapon to do some damage so you can hold the enemy's attention. Weapon mastery works a little bit differently. It is only earned from killing enemies or contributing to killing enemies. If you have the weapon drawn and a teammate nearby takes down an enemy, you will be given some weapon mastery XP as a credit towards the kill. If you are weapon swapping between two different weapons and you do damage with both weapons will earn a certain amount of weapon mastery XP as well. You'll find that the first sort of few kills that you get with a weapon, you get lots of levels, and then you need to, like, as you move towards weapon mastery 20, the max level, it's going to take quite a few more kills to get those weapon mastery levels unlocked. Unlike with strength, dexterity, intelligence, focus, constitution, as you put points into these, they don't necessarily guarantee a damage increase. Weapon mastery points are spent on passives, which are the little circles, or abilities, which are often represented with the bigger square icons. My general recommendation is to spend your first few weapon mastery points unlocking abilities, so choosing like 2 from the left-hand side skill tree, 1 from the right, or all from the left, all from the right, simply choosing which abilities sound fun to you. In the case of both attributes and weapon mastery, we can re-roll these at any point, so don't be worried if you're making the wrong choice. But my initial recommendation is to choose some abilities and then focus on either the left side skill tree or the right side skill tree and just put points into one side to unlock the ultimate. This is the big circle down at the bottom. The ultimate can only be unlocked by putting 10 points into that particular side of the skill tree, and quite often the ultimates are very powerful. So yeah, spend your first 11 weapon mastery skill points typically on one side of the skill tree, unless you really like the look of an ability on the other side of the skill tree. But again, I wouldn't worry about this too much. It's not as if you do it wrong. It is not a permanent decision. It is very easy to re-roll and respec and make the changes to both your weapon mastery and your attributes as you see fit. For a full breakdown on each weapon in Aeternum and where I would spend my weapon mastery points, make sure you check out this video that I've got linked up in the top right. It's also in the description down below. We are going to be going over every weapon in Aeternum and the sort of best builds, best playstyle, best places to put your stats for each and every weapon in the game. As we mentioned earlier in this video, Aeternum's crafting systems play a very important part in your character's development and as a way for you to make coin off of other players. Each archetype gets a boost into 3 different skills: 1 gathering, 1 refining, and 1 crafting trade skill. The crafting trade skills are on the top row of this screen, and these are used for making weapons, armor, jewelry, and various other items your character can equip. You can observe which crafting station uses which craft by hovering over the icon in the bottom left of the skills recipe page, which you can get to simply by clicking or tapping on the relevant crafting trade skill. Most crafted items require refined materials to make. These refined materials are made at the smelter, the wood shop, tannery, the loom, and the stone cutting table. In order to make refined materials at these refining stations, you will need the raw materials, which you earn from gathering with tools that you can make through the crafting trade skill. So it's kind of like a circle there, but generally you're just going to be gathering items as you explore Aeternum. As I leveled up my ranger archetype character for the gameplay you see in this video, I took advantage of the boosts he had in logging, woodworking, and engineering, which allowed me to craft powerful bows and spears as I leveled up, making me much stronger. I also crafted myself higher tier gathering tools, so I was able to make steel tools early on through engineering, which allowed me to gather materials faster and in larger quantities, giving me stuff to upgrade my other refining skills and then subsequently my other trade skills as well. Whilst it is possible to level up to max, fight other players, and defeat the hardest bosses in the game without doing any crafting, I would still recommend engaging in New World's trade skill systems, as they make leveling up much easier, providing you with character experience as you craft, and if nothing else, the resources you earn you can sell to other players for some valuable coin. Through the crafting trade skill system, you can make instruments, you can make bags, you can make potions, weapons, armor, jewelry, you name it. It's all earned through crafting, and a lot of it is very comparable to powerful items that you can earn from dungeons, PvP, and other aspects of the game as well. So in short, crafting is done in a 3-part system. It starts off with gathering. You can buy these materials off of other players, you can sell these materials to other players, but these are effectively things that you pick up off the floor or by chopping down trees. You then refine them at refining stations, and then you turn those refined goods into crafted goods. These are your weapons, armor, jewelry, etc. As your character's level increases in New World Aeternum, so too should your character's gear score. You can view what your character's current gear score is by opening up the inventory and checking this number here. You can also check the individual gear score of every item that you have equipped or items in your bag by hovering over them and checking this number here. Typically, the higher the gear score number, the more stats that item will provide you with, and for armor, it will also give you more armor rating, and for weapons, you will have more weapon damage on a higher gear score weapon. So as you acquire higher gear score items, my general advice is to equip them, provided the stats for the item line up with your character's playstyle. If you're playing the Destroyer archetype, and you have Warhammer Great Axe, and you find a very high gear score pair of boots, but they have focus, you may want to leave the lower gear score strength or constitution boots, as those stats are more relevant for your character, even though the focus boots are higher gear score. Again, the stats are quite important as well. Another aspect to consider when choosing what items to equip to your character is the item's rarity. Your first few hours in Aeternum are typically only going to have you finding gray, green, and blue items. This color dictates the item's rarity. So gray items are common, green items are uncommon, and blue items are rare. There are also purple, golden, and then reddish golden items, but we'll cover those in a separate video. Green items will typically have a stat, so strength, constitution, and then they will have one perk or a gem slot. Blue items will have a stat, again, like your intelligence or strength, and then they would typically have two perks or one perk slot and one gem slot. When deciding whether you should choose a higher gear score item versus a higher rarity item, I would typically choose the higher gear score item, unless the perks on the higher rarity item are really good. For more info on what perks I think are good in New World Aeternum, I'm going to link a video up in the top right in the description down below. This is a fairly lengthy and complicated topic, more for endgame players, but if you are interested, the video is there. So to recap, generally, higher gear score item is equip it. Don't worry too much about rarity, and in general, don't worry too much about gear score at all. Just aim for higher gear score gear because it will give you more damage, more armor, and more stats, which again will make the leveling process easier. I just wanted to briefly interrupt myself here, friends, to talk a little bit more about gear score and rarity and when it's a good idea to, choose a higher gear score item versus maybe leaving it in your inventory, salvaging it, selling it, etc. So right now we have an example of a Great Axe on the left that is higher gear score. So it's 363 gear score compared to the 350 gear score that I currently have equipped, and you can see it does a little bit more slash damage, but we lose out on the strength that my Great Axe, my blue Great Axe is providing, also the empty socket for gems, which we'll touch on briefly, and the enchanted perk. The enchanted perk says that my light and heavy attacks deal 3.5% more damage, so I would lose out on quite a bit. For the marginal increase in weapon damage that I get, I lose 16 strength, I lose the enchanted, and I use the gem slot. So in this case, I don't actually believe it is worth to equip this. Even though it is higher gear score, you're losing out on so many different things. If it was a green Great Axe and it was at least providing me with 16 strength, we maybe would consider it, but even then, losing the enchanted perk, that's representative of, I don't know, I would say about 20 to 25 gear score anyway, so this would have to be considerably higher gear score, maybe like 450 gear score for it to potentially be worth it. So since it's only 13 gear score points higher, we are not going to equip that. The next question you guys might have is, what do I do with the items I don't want, Baggins? Well, you have two choices. If they are bind and equip, like we have another Great Axe here that you can see it says down here, bind and equip, we can actually sell it to other players. So you could take it to the trading post and put it up on the trading post to see if anybody wants to buy it, or you could just trade it to them directly pressing up on the D-pad, or I think it's T on the keyboard, in order to initiate a player trade. But your other option is simply just to go ahead and salvage them. So that's holding down Y on the controller for Xbox, it's triangle on the PlayStation, and it's C with mouse and keyboard. We can just get rid of items. We'll get a little bit of gold, and sometimes if we're lucky, we'll get some extra materials if we get the perfect salvage as well. So let's just take a look through a few more items that we have. We have another gear score increase here, 6 gear score, and it does have 16 strength, and it has the socket, but instead of having enchanted, we have fortifying whirlwind. Now, unfortunately, with the build that I'm currently using, I actually don't have Whirlwind. I'm using Maelstrom, Execute, and Reap. Now, of course, I could just go ahead and, change my weapon mastery and equip the Whirlwind perk, and then I could take advantage of that. But for me, again, because it doesn't represent that much of a gear score increase, and I'm not that much of a fan of the Whirlwind ability until you get to later levels, I would also probably just go ahead and salvage this one as well. However, taking a look at this Warhammer here, it requires me to be level 34 to equip, but it's just strictly better in my opinion. It's got some nice perks, it gives me more strength, it's got more weapon damage. The only downside is I need to be level 34 to equip that one, but that is just a strict gear score upgrade there. Another thing that I want to talk about is the actual heaviness of the items. So you can see items have this heavy tag. My current gloves are medium, my legs are light legs, my chest is a heavy chest. This is important when it comes to choosing to upgrade your gear or not, because it can move you into a higher equip load threshold. So you can see I'm in medium right now, and we get all the benefits outlined there on the medium section. If I go ahead and put these gloves on, they are a gear score increase. They're providing me with dexterity and constitution. They have a gem slot. They have the empowering breaker perk. But if I put them on, you can see equip load is now heavy. So that's moved me into a heavy equip load. I'm now doing less damage, less healing. I do have more block stability, which is great for tanks. But we also have a like sort of movement impaired dodge as well here. We have this little sort of shuffle instead of the normal hop that we would get. If I go ahead and put the gloves back on, just to demonstrate the difference between the two dodges here, now we have this sort of hop. And if I put light armor on, so if I was to choose to put like a light chest and a light helmet, I would then get the dodge roll, which some of you guys may be accustomed to depending on what sort of armor you're wearing. So it is worth factoring in if something is a gear score increase. Is it light, medium, or heavy? Because if you find a chest piece that is a lot better than your current in terms of gear score, but it is a heavy chest, you might lose having the dodge rolls. If I put this light chest on here, 350, 361, so it is a higher gear score chest, but I actually end up losing armor between the two of them because heavy armor pieces have more armor on them. You can see the Marauder Gladiator breastplate of the soldier has 345 physical and elemental armor, whereas this light sort of dress basically only has 108 armor. So it is also worth factoring in whether it's a light, medium, or heavy armor piece when equipping it to your character. Right, now the other thing I briefly want to touch on is gems. I think this, again, is worth doing a separate video on, but as you level up, you'll start to notice that you get more and more items with this socket in. So it says empty socket, attach a gem to add its effect. So I have a few gems down in my inventory here. We have a cut flawed opal, we have a cut diamond, and then we have some uncut gems. You can tell the difference between the two of them because cut gems will have these two options. It'll say Gambit 1 or Elemental Ward 1. In the case of the diamond, it's Rally 2 or Wilderness Ward. But then the uncut versions, they don't say anything. They just say used in jewel crafting, used in jewel crafting. So what you would do is you take them to an outfitting station, and then you scroll down to the gems section, and you'll find the option to make these cut gems throughout here. So you'll require the uncut gem, which you typically get from mining, so mining iron or silver, gold, platinum veins. The higher tier, the material that you're mining, the higher rarity that you will get for these gems as well, which have like stronger effects the higher rarity you go up. And the way that the gems work is once you cut them, you have two different options. If I go ahead and click on my Warhammer here, then we choose to attach gem, and we select the diamond, I can put a diamond into my Warhammer, and it says 9% damage and outgoing healing while at full health. So when I'm at full health, I do 9% more damage, which is quite nice. However, if I go ahead and put this into my armor, I'm actually going to get the bottom effect. This is the same if I put it in jewelry as well. So the top effect is always what happens if you put it in your weapon, and the bottom effect is what happens when you put it in your armor. So if I go ahead and click on my chest piece here, attach gem, put the diamond in there, I'm going to get that wilderness option, which is going to give me some physical and elemental armor increases. So 1.1% physical, 0.3% elemental damage. So the gems are just there to give you a little extra stat boost. I wouldn't really get too hooked up on them as you are leveling up, because the problem is as you equip new items, so if I go ahead and put a different Warhammer on, well, I can't actually because I don't have a high enough level, I'm not able to transfer the gem over. Gems are effectively lost. Once you put them into your item, you can't get them back. So you'll need to constantly be sourcing new gems for your new equipment as you level up, which is why I would say that until you get to around like level 60 or even 65, it's typically not worth putting gems in unless you just have an abundance of them lying around in your inventory, or you want every single little stat boost you can get. But yeah, to recap on gems, you get the uncut versions from mining various resources. That's your iron, your silver, your gold around the map. Then you take the uncut gems to the outfitting station and you refine them into cut gems with the other materials, and then you can socket them into your weapons, armor, and jewelry, provided the weapon, armor, or jewelry has the socket in it. So there's no socket in this amulet, but there is one in this great axe, and there are some in all of my armor here. You can also buy gems off of other players on the trading post and trade for them as well. Upon reaching level 17 in New World Aeternum, purple, green, and orange quests will pop up in the Everfall region. Whilst you don't need to start these quests immediately, I would recommend you pick them up as soon as the main story quest line sends you to the Oxborough settlement, which is located in the Everfall region. These quests begin your faction initiation, which is your ability to join the Marauders, which is the green, the Syndicate, purple, or the Covenant, orange. Now, once you choose a quest, it doesn't mean that you're locked into joining that faction. There will be a series of quests and tasks, and then at the end of the quest line, they will ask you whether you want to join the faction. Again, this is not a permanent decision. You can change factions. At time of recording, I want to say it's every 30 days. It might be every 60 days. It's changed a few times since the game came out. But if you're playing with a group of friends, I would typically recommend you all join the same faction. People who are from opposing factions cannot join the same company, so Marauders can only be in a company with other Marauders. And we'll talk a bit more about companies and how they work later on in the video. Another aspect to factions is how it interacts with PvP, or player versus player. So if you flag up for PvP, open world PvP, you will not be able to attack other Marauders as a Marauder yourself, but you will be able to attack Syndicate and Covenant members. Inversely, if you choose Marauder and your friend chooses Covenant, and you're both flagged for PvP, you will not be able to be in a party together whilst PvP flagged. Now, if you're playing solo, or you have no interest in player versus player activities, I'd still very much recommend completing one of the faction quest lines and joining said faction, as this is important to unlock faction missions and, more importantly, the faction store. In the faction store, you can purchase equipment, consumables, and very important endgame crafting materials. By not choosing a faction, you're missing out on a huge chunk of items available to you in the game, and also a lot of quests, which again can increase your character's level. So make sure you do choose a faction around level 17. From a gameplay and mechanics standpoint, there are no inherent advantages to choosing one faction over another. It's not like Marauders get a specific type of gear that Covenant members don't get, so on and so forth. It's mainly just down to the cosmetics and visual appearance of each faction, and again, the ability to join a company, declare war, and attack each other in an open world PvP setting. So in terms of which faction should you choose, either join the one that your friends are joining, or pick the one that sounds coolest to you. I usually choose Covenant because I think the Covenant armor looks really cool, and I've also got a big Covenant banner in my stream room, which I've had for quite some time now, so you know, that kind of incentivizes me to join that faction as well. The next milestone to look out for is when you hit level 20. You're going to see a quest pop up in the north of Everfall to talk to an NPC called Jochi Khan. Just like with the faction introduction quest, you don't need to do this immediately, but I would recommend getting around to it as soon as you arrive in the Everfall region. Jochi is going to ask you to talk to the Beast Lords, which involves going into a cave. While you're in there, you will also gather Azoth-infused oats, and next to the oats, you're going to see a print on the wall for the sign or the symbol of the horse. I recommend grabbing this now, but it's not going to be useful until much later on in the game. After you leave the cave, you're going to find a wild horse waiting nearby. Interact with it, and you can feed it the Azoth-infused oats. From here, you simply need to go back to Jochi and talk to him, and he will add Moon Shadow to your inventory. If you open up this Moon Shadow, the mount will be added to your mount collection, at which point you can press right on the D-pad or X on the keyboard as the default keybind to summon your mount. After this, you're going to see a quest pop up in front of you for the Hermit's Rally. This is a mount quest, which basically just has you riding through objectives. So you ride through one flag to get to the next flag, and you've got to do it in a certain amount of time. Make sure to stay on the road where you can. When you're on the road, you get extra movement speed benefits with the mount. Sometimes it does make sense to go cross country, but I think for the first race, yeah, just stick to the road and make sure to use the speed boost when it's appropriate. After this, you'll return to Jochi. I'll give you a quest and teach you how to make victuals, which is basically a food you can feed to your mount. So whilst you're mounted, just use it from the inventory and you'll feed it, and this will get you more riding XP. Every time you complete a race or feed your mount some victuals, you'll get riding XP, which increases your riding level, and the higher riding level you go, the faster your mount can move. You're also going to see a bunch of other quests pop up around the Everfall region. Completing these, as we mentioned, will get you more and more riding XP, which will then take you through the riding quest line. Now, if you guys pre-ordered New World Aeternum on Xbox or PS5, or you're playing on PC and have played prior to October 15th, 2024, you will also have access to a direwolf mount called the Azoth Stalker. To change your mount type and appearance, you can switch to the mount tab in your inventory and then select the icon for your current mount, in this case probably Moonshadow. From here, you'll be able to see the mount menu, which includes the different cosmetic versions of different mounts that you can get. Although mechanics-wise, there's no difference between the horse, direwolf, lion, or bear mount. They all move at the same speed, and they have the same amount of health. You may want to consider completing your current mount quests on the map as they pop up, because following this quest chain will eventually lead you to unlocking a free direwolf and lion mount skin, and you'll get lots of riding XP as you complete these mount quests, which again will increase your mounted movement speed dramatically. So in short, keep doing the mount quests as you see fit. They'll send you into different regions and across the map, and eventually you'll unlock new skins for different mount types as well, including the direwolf and the lion. As you continue to progress the main story quest line in Aeternum and level up your character, there are going to be many more milestones to look forward to. For example, if you go to the level rewards section within your character's attributes screen, you can get a good breakdown of various milestones and unlocks that you're going to be getting at different levels on your way to 65. After choosing a faction and unlocking your mount, the next big milestone will be the Season Pass. You unlock this at level 25. Now, I'm going to be covering how the Season Pass works in a separate video, including how to level it up and make the most out of the rewards that you get. So if you're interested in that topic, make sure to check out the video I've got linked up in the top right or in the description down below. But it's effectively a free and paid battle pass. So there's a free version, paid version, and it'll contain various rewards, crafting boosts, and tokens you can use to power up a character, and sometimes it's got quite a few skins in there as well. Generally though, the main story quest line will do a good job of giving you gear for unlocks your character makes. So for example, by the time you hit level 40 and you get your earring unlock, you'll have likely received an earring as a quest reward from some part of the main storyline, or even just as a drop from enemies you've killed on your way to level 40. One aspect of Aeternum that you won't see in the leveling rewards screen is the expeditions. These are found in the activities tab and are optional group content within the game. Completing expeditions will require a group of at least 3 players, but usually you'll want to bring 5. Each player will also need to meet the minimum level requirement and the minimum gear score requirement as well. And as we covered in the gear score tab, if you're not sure what your gear score is, you can just open up your inventory and check the number just here on the screen. Expeditions typically consist of several large packs of enemies, a few mini boss type enemies, and 2 to 3 boss type enemies. Some of them, like the Lazarus Instrumentality, also have puzzles that the players will need to complete in order to progress through the expedition into the next room. This content can be quite challenging for first-time players, but also very rewarding. The bosses and chests in the expeditions contain powerful items which will be appropriate for the level of the expedition itself. For example, the first expedition you'll have access to is Amrine Excavation. I think this is unlocked at about level 25, I will need to check. And yeah, the enemies in there are going to be around that level, and the loot will be appropriate for around a level 25 player. If you have a group of players ready to go, you can simply hit the enter button that you see on the screen here on the right. Alternatively, you can view lobbies to see if anybody has a group for you to join, or you can make your own lobby, or you can simply select to queue and have the game find a group for you. When queuing, joining a lobby, or making a lobby, the game will ask whether you'd like to play as tank, damage, or healer. Differences between these roles can be explained in another video I have uploaded on the channel, and again, links to that up in the top right or description down below. But effectively, it's do you want to be doing damage, do you want to be sitting there and taking the damage, or do you want to be healing everybody up? Most groups will look to run 1 tank, 1 healer, and 3 damage dealers. Other things to look out for when leveling up in Aeternum is the current level of your armor, weapons, jewelry, and tools. With the previous character I leveled up, my focus was just on completing each quest and moving to the next one. So I didn't really pay attention to what my character had equipped onto him, and I found at a certain point the damage I was doing was very low and the damage I was taking was very high. The reason for this is because I never stopped to make any upgrades to my gear, and although my character was around level 40 at the time, some of the armor that he was wearing was received when I was level 20. You can see the recommended level of gear down at the bottom of each item, showing it on the screen here. This meant I was much lower in gear score, armor rating, and weapon damage than somebody who was of a similar level but had kept up with their gear upgrades through faction advancement and crafting, etc. You'll see as I flick through the crafting recipes on the screen here, if I go through the faction shop, certain items can be equipped at minimum level 20, 30, 40, and so on. If you want to keep your progression in Aeternum as smooth as possible, I highly recommend you keep up with your faction story questline by doing faction missions and then doing the appropriate unlocks to get to the next tier. I also recommend that you keep your crafting leveled up, or you could do this instead of. By keeping your crafting at a decent level, you'll be able to craft the next best gear that is available for every sort of level unlock. So I think, for example, getting your engineering to level 100 will give you the ability to craft level 30 items. There's some citation needed here. But yeah, generally moving your crafting and upgrading your crafting level with your character level will keep your gear in parity as well. I had my most recent character crafting the best bows and spears I could for his level, and the damage increase was substantial. If you find yourself struggling with a particular enemy or quest in Aeternum, take a look at your current gear and see if there's any improvements you can make. Outside of this, just make sure you keep completing the current main storyline quest you have available. Outside of the starting quest line, you know, you'll get that alternative one that we talked about in either Windsward or Monarch's Bluff. Don't necessarily need to do that unless you just want the story experience. Following the main storyline quest will take you into the Brimstone Sands region up in the top left, and then eventually you'll go down to the max level region of First Light and the Elysian Wilds. As you move closer to the max level of 65, you're going to be unlocking content such as invasions, more housing slots, the PvP zone, Outpost Rush, and artifacts. A lot of this content is what I consider to be the end game in Aeternum. So this is progression that your character makes that's not tied to your character's level, but instead the power level of their gear, so their weapons and armor, jewelry, or even your reputation as a player or company on the server. These are the things that you're going to be progressing when you hit max level. Now, the end game in New World Aeternum can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming to the new player and to the fresh level 65 player, but I've broken down all the different activities and goals that you may want to work towards in New World Aeternum in my end game guide video, and again, we have a link to that up in the top right or in the description down below. To end this video, friends, I'd like to say that New World Aeternum is as much about the journey as it is the destination. So you may be inclined to rush the max level as soon as possible, but I would recommend taking it slow. Enjoy the game for what it has to offer, and don't be afraid to mix it up and try some different weapons or try leveling up a different craft, some new abilities as you move through the levels. There's generally a space for every kind of player in Aeternum. If you really like fishing, for example, legendary fish are quite hard to come by, but they're also very valuable to those with a high cooking proficiency. It allows you to make some of the best food in the game. So by virtue, you as a fisherman are very valuable to your server's economy. If you enjoy the music system, the higher level buffs you get from music will be very useful to other players who haven't got their music leveled up, and you'll find yourself racking up quite a lot of tips as you play music in town. So again, even somebody who just wants to focus on music, you are still useful to your server's population. So don't be afraid if you're doing it wrong. Every playstyle has some validity in New World Aeternum, especially in the first few weeks of a fresh start server. Once again, thank you very much to Amazon Games for sponsoring this video. Super appreciate it. I feel like there is still so many more aspects of the game that I want to discuss, and as you guys have seen, there's about 500 other videos that I have related to topics in New World Aeternum, so if there's anything in particular that you're confused about, take a look through my video library. We've got lots of guides and builds and information on this game. If you want to just talk to me in real time, I'm going to be streaming lots and lots of New World Aeternum live over on Twitch, and you can find a link to my Twitch channel. Drop by, say hi, ask me any questions, generally trying to interact with the Twitch chat as much as I can. So yeah, links to this Twitch in the description down below. Other YouTube videos are available here on the channel. And thank you once again to Amazon Games for sponsoring this video. If you've made it to the end of this video and you have decided you want to get New World Aeternum because you haven't already for some reason, make sure to use my link. And if you want to buy it for a friend or share this video with a friend, that's much appreciated as well. So thank you, Amazon, for the sponsorship, and I'll catch you guys all in the next video.